In 1992, Joe Pesci and Ralph Macchio delivered one of the greatest courtroom comedies in Hollywood history with My Cousin Vinny.
In 1992, a small courtroom comedy arrived in theaters and quietly became one of the most beloved films Hollywood has ever produced. Even decades later, people still quote its funniest moments, debate its greatest scenes, and celebrate the unforgettable performances that made it a classic. Most viewers remember the laughs, the courtroom chaos, and a famous showdown that changed everything. But behind the scenes, the story of My Cousin Vinny was far more surprising than most fans realize. Hidden beneath the comedy were intense studio battles, controversial casting decisions, real-life legal inspirations, and even an Oscar victory that sparked one of Hollywood's biggest conspiracy theories. The journey to bring this movie to life was filled with obstacles that could have destroyed it before audiences ever had the chance to see it. And the strangest part? Some of the very people responsible for making the film almost removed the characters and performances that eventually made it legendary. Let's begin with the unlikely conversation that started everything. Every great movie begins with an idea, but My Cousin Vinny started with something much simpler, a casual discussion at a party. Back in the early 1970s, writer Dale Launer was still a college student trying to figure out his future. During a conversation with a man who had recently taken the bar exam, Launer became curious about something most people never think about. What happens if someone fails a test? The man explained that they simply take it again, then again, and again if necessary. That answer sparked another question in Launer's mind. What was the highest number of times someone had ever failed before finally passing? The response shocked him. Someone had reportedly failed the bar exam 13 times before eventually succeeding. For most people, that would have been the end of the conversation. But for Launer, it became an obsession. He couldn't stop imagining what kind of lawyer would emerge after failing such important tests over and over again. More importantly, what would happen if that lawyer suddenly found himself handling a life-or-death case? That simple question remained in his mind for years. Eventually, it evolved into a story that audiences would come to know as My Cousin Vinny. Ironically, one of the film's most important characters almost never made it into the movie at all. Today, Mona Lisa Vito is considered one of the greatest comedy characters of the 1990s. Her intelligence, confidence, and unforgettable courtroom testimony helped turn the film into a classic. But studio executives had a completely different vision. When they reviewed an early version of the script, they suggested removing Mona Lisa entirely, not reducing her role, not changing her dialogue, removing her completely. Their reasoning was surprisingly simple. They felt the character had too many memorable lines and too many moments where she appeared smarter than Vinny himself. Some executives believed those scenes should be transferred to the main character instead. Fortunately, writer Dale Launer strongly disagreed. He argued that the entire emotional payoff of the movie depended on Mona Lisa. The final courtroom revelation works because nobody expects her to be the person who saves the day. Her knowledge becomes the key that unlocks the entire case. Without her, the story would lose its biggest surprise. After considerable debate, the studio eventually backed down, but their fight against the character wasn't over. When casting began, both Launer and director Jonathan Lynn believed they had found the perfect actress for the role, Marisa Tomei. The studio disagreed once again. Executives preferred another candidate and resisted the idea of casting Tomei. Director Jonathan Lynn spent nearly half an hour arguing his case before finally winning the battle. It turned out to be one of the most important decisions in the film's history. The actress they tried so hard to reject would eventually walk onto the Oscar stage and take home Hollywood's highest honor. Casting the younger characters proved equally complicated. Long before audiences met Bill Gambini and Stan Rothenstein, several future stars were being considered for those roles. Among them were Ben Stiller and a young television actor named Will Smith, who was rapidly gaining popularity thanks to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. At first glance, either actor could have worked. However, filmmakers worried that changing the background of the characters would dramatically alter the story's tone. The plot revolved around two outsiders facing a murder charge in rural Alabama. The creators felt that introducing different racial or cultural dynamics would create serious themes they weren't prepared to explore within a comedy. Ultimately, Ralph Macchio and Mitchell Whitfield were selected. Whitfield went through his own challenge before filming even began. After learning about the auditions, he flew back across the country and reportedly lost around 25 pounds to secure the role. Meanwhile, another major casting decision was unfolding behind closed doors. Today it's impossible to imagine anyone except Joe Pesci playing Vinny Gambini. His accent, timing, personality, and energy feel perfectly matched to the character. Yet, Pesci was far from the first actor considered. Several major names were discussed, including Danny DeVito, Peter Falk, Robert De Niro, and Jim Belushi. The filmmakers knew they needed someone capable of portraying a very specific type of New York personality. Someone loud, confident, street dash.
Smart and unmistakably authentic. Eventually, Joe Pesci emerged as the clear choice. Interestingly, Pesci later revealed that he already knew people very similar to Vinny from his own upbringing in New Jersey. He grew up around men who appeared rough and intimidating on the surface, but possessed surprising intelligence underneath. Those real-life experiences helped shape every aspect of the character. The result was a performance that felt completely natural. And while Pesci was helping create one of cinema's most memorable lawyers, director Jonathan Lynn was quietly ensuring that the courtroom itself felt surprisingly realistic. Most comedy films pay little attention to legal accuracy. My Cousin Vinny did the opposite. Jonathan Lynn wasn't simply a filmmaker. He also had a law degree, and he brought that knowledge directly into production. He carefully monitored courtroom procedures, witness questioning, legal arguments, and judicial behavior. Rather than creating a fantasy version of the justice system, Lynn wanted the legal portions of the film to feel authentic. That decision paid off in a remarkable way. Over the years, law schools, professors, attorneys, and even judges have praised My Cousin Vinny as one of the most accurate courtroom movies ever made. Some legal experts have even used scenes from the film to teach future lawyers about cross-examination and trial strategy. For a comedy about an inexperienced attorney, that's an incredible achievement. And it's only the beginning of the secrets hidden behind this Hollywood classic.
While audiences were busy laughing at Vinny's courtroom mistakes, few realized that many of the locations on screen weren't what they appear to be. The story takes place almost entirely in Alabama. The roads, the towns, the accents, and the courtroom all convince viewers that they're deep in the American South. But there's one detail most fans never notice. The movie wasn't filmed in Alabama at all. Instead, production took place across several locations in Georgia. The filmmakers found small towns that perfectly matched the atmosphere they wanted. Historic courthouses, quiet streets, and rural highways helped create the illusion without ever crossing into Alabama. Even some of the road signs had to be modified to maintain the illusion. Yet eagle-eyed viewers can still spot a few clues that reveal the truth. The courthouse scenes that became some of the film's most iconic moments were filmed in real Georgia locations, giving the movie a sense of authenticity that would have been difficult to recreate on a soundstage. But the most surprising location wasn't a courthouse. It was a prison. When Bill and Stan are first arrested, the jail scenes feel incredibly realistic. The tension is immediate. The atmosphere feels uncomfortable. Everything looks authentic because, in many ways, it was the production team filmed inside an actual working prison. Even more surprising, many of the people visible in the background weren't actors. They were real inmates. Imagine being a young actor playing a frightened college student while standing inside a genuine correctional facility surrounded by people serving real sentences. That reality gave those scenes a weight that audiences can still feel decades later. There are certain things a movie set can imitate, but genuine environments often bring an authenticity that cannot be manufactured. The prison scenes are a perfect example. And speaking of hidden details, one of Vinny's most important character traits never made it into the finished movie. For years, viewers have asked the same question. If Vinny is so intelligent, why did it take him 6 attempts to pass the bar exam? The answer originally existed within the script. In Dale Launer's early drafts, Vinny was written as dyslexic. That single detail explained everything. A person can be highly intelligent, quick-thinking, and naturally talented while still struggling with reading-intensive examinations. The bar exam places enormous pressure on candidates to process huge amounts of written information in a limited time. Under those circumstances, repeated failures suddenly become much easier to understand. The condition would have also added emotional depth to Vinny's personality, his stubbornness, his pride, his refusal to ask for help. All of it would have carried additional meaning. However, during development, the detail was removed. Director Jonathan Lynn believed the story worked without it. The film remained successful, but many critics later pointed out that Vinny's repeated failures seemed difficult to reconcile with his obvious intelligence. Ironically, the explanation had been there all along. It simply never reached the final cut. And while some important story elements disappeared before filming, the battle over Mona Lisa Vito was far from over. By this point, the studio had already tried to remove the character from the script. Now they were fighting against the actress chosen to play her. Jonathan Lynn remained convinced that Marisa Tomei was perfect for the role. The studio remained equally convinced that she wasn't. The disagreement became so intense that lengthy arguments reportedly took place behind closed doors. Eventually, Lynn stood his ground. But before the final decision was made, he sought another opinion. Joe Pesci. Lynn showed Pesci several screen tests without revealing which actress he personally preferred. After watching them, Pesci immediately selected the same actress Lynn had chosen, Marisa Tomei. Two of the film's most important creative voices had independently reached the same conclusion. The studio finally relented. History would prove they made the right decision. Years later, it became impossible to imagine anyone else playing the role. Her performance wasn't simply memorable, it became legendary. Yet while one star was rising, another beloved actor was quietly approaching the end of an extraordinary career. Few characters in My Cousin Vinny are as memorable as Judge Chamberlain Holler. His stern expression, his commanding presence, his endless frustration with Vinny's courtroom antics. Every scene involving the judge feels funnier because he takes everything so seriously. The man behind that performance was actor Gwynne. Many viewers recognize him from an entirely different role decades earlier when he played Herman Munster on the classic television series The Munsters. For years, Gwynne worked
hard to move beyond that famous character and demonstrate his range as an actor. My Cousin Vinny gave him the perfect opportunity. His performance balanced authority, intelligence, and comedy in a way that elevated every courtroom scene. What makes the role even more emotional today is knowing that it became his final film appearance. During production, Gwynne was already battling serious health problems. Just 1 year after the movie's release, he passed away from pancreatic cancer at the age of 66. Looking back now, his performance feels even more special. He didn't simply play a judge. He helped create one of the most beloved comedy characters of the decade. And he did it in what would become his final appearance on screen. Another respected performer, Pauline Myers, also made her final screen appearance in the film before retiring shortly afterward. Without anyone realizing it at the time, My Cousin Vinny became a farewell project for multiple talented performers. But perhaps the most unexpected controversy connected to the film involved a character who appeared on screen for only a short time. Early in the story, audiences meet the nervous public defender assigned to Bill and Stan before Vinny arrives. The lawyer struggles with a severe stutter, creating several of the movie's funniest moments. Audiences laughed. The scenes became memorable. But for actor Austin Pendleton, the experience carried a much deeper personal meaning. Unlike the character, Pendleton wasn't pretending. He had struggled with stuttering himself during his younger years. To play the role, he had to revisit painful memories he thought were long behind him. At the time, it seemed like just another acting challenge. But after the movie's release, unexpected criticism followed. Many people within the stuttering community felt the portrayal encouraged audiences to laugh at a real condition. Pendleton received angry letters and criticism that continued for years. Decades later, he admitted that the backlash affected him deeply. In fact, he later suggested that accepting the role may have been one of the most difficult decisions of his career. What audiences viewed as harmless comedy carried a very different emotional weight for the man performing it. And as My Cousin Vinny continued growing into a cultural phenomenon, an even larger controversy was waiting just around the corner. A controversy that would eventually become one of Hollywood's most famous Oscar debates.